I'm John Davis, and I'm a local artist and craftsman from here in North Mississippi, and I made this Centaur in 2014 when I lived in Water Valley, Mississippi, and I'm telling the story about it. They say it takes 1,000 hours to master something. So I didn't keep up with my time, but I worked every day, 7 days a week working on it until I finished it. All the problems I came up with, I crossed that bridge when I got to it, like doing a face or doing the hands. One of these days I will redo those hands. That's probably the weakest part of it. They're kind of gnarly, but I had great fun doing this, and I think a lot of people have had fun just having him out in public. So he's been in Oxford. I think I brought him in last Thursday. So he was a little bit controversial in Water Valley, but that's okay. Art's supposed to be a little bit. It's supposed to get people to thinking. If people got a smile out of him and a laugh, and he served his purpose and continues to. So I'm proud to have him here in Oxford. And appreciate Willie Wallace letting me show my Centaur in front of his business here at Local Color on North Lamar in Oxford. He helps add some local color to Oxford, as he did in Water Valley. I went to Ole Miss a little bit in the 70s. I think I was here in 75 and 6. My mother worked here, and I had faculty staff scholarship. But I like Oxford, and I grew up in Bruce, so just down the road. And moved up here in the early 80s and moved to Water Valley. And I'm back in Lafayette County. I moved back here in 2017. 2014 in February on a Sunday night, I was over at my friend John Forsythe's, and he'd borrowed one of my books on making concrete sculpture, and neither one of us had done it, and he had started one the day before of the Venus of Willendorf. He did it like 4 feet tall of this naked woman about 4 feet high, and anyway, he just started it, and I couldn't let him get ahead of me, and I told him I was going to start one in the morning and decided to do a Centaur. And I got up the next morning and posted on Facebook that I was doing my first concrete sculpture, and I was going to put it in the sculpture park that was opening in March in Water Valley. And so I had great hopes of getting this Centaur done within a month, and it took me from most of February into the first part of June to finish it. And I had been reading these books and thinking about making something out of concrete for a couple of years, and I got on the internet and books and designed this figure that I was going to make, and I had something going within a day or so, and was posting my pictures of my progress on Facebook, and had people following me, and I couldn't quit since I was out in public on Facebook showing my progress, so I just got totally wound up in it. I was doing it in my basement in my house in Water Valley. I learned a lot about sculpture. I was doing an animal figure, the horse part, and then the human figure, and doing for the first time I'd ever done a face or hands, or so I had quite a learning curve in doing this. It was a very ambitious project, and at times it might look like I bit off more than I could chew, but I just kept at it. For the first project, I'm happy with the way it turned out, and I think people have really got a kick out of seeing a Centaur out in public in a small town in Mississippi. So from there, I've made more sculptures. Have really enjoyed this. I've been a woodworker making chairs, and I wanted to get into something where I had total control over the shapes. And I was looking at some of these concrete sculptures, and it was affordable. Like if he was out of bronze, the foundry bill might have been $20,000 or $30,000 just to have him cast. And with concrete, you can get all your materials locally. I use rebar and wire, and I got white Portland cement from Smith Building Supply in Oxford, which is a little bit higher, but actually the materials weren't that high, so he turned out white instead of gray, like concrete would be. And the first time I painted him spotted, like kind of like a Dalmatian or a Appaloosa horse. And then the human part was I did in skin tone. And anyway, that lasted a little while, and then I learned most of what I learned on YouTube. YouTube was great. I watched all these tutorials from different people, and it's like sitting in a college classroom learning how to do this. All these different things that I had to learn, so I was learning how to do a bronze effect with paint, using metallic paints, and make something look like bronze. And I watched several different people and the way they did it, and I found this metallic paint at Walmart. So that was my source of paint. The price was right, and it turned out to be pretty durable. It's held up in the weather fairly well. The Centaurs held up for 5 years. Then the bronze paint was put on in 2016, so that's held up out in the weather for 3 years, and has done pretty well. It didn't work out to where I could put it in the sculpture park they were talking about in Water Valley for various reasons. A lot of things went on behind the scenes that I wasn't privy to, so I really don't know what went on with that. And I thought maybe I'd be able to show it in Oxford. Showed him the first time, and John Forsythe had a show in Pine Valley called the Pine Valley Music and Art Show, and in June of 2014. And I brought him back home for a little bit and showed him at the Crawdad Hole through Christmas. And people, the Crawdad Hole in Water Valley, and people were asking me in Water Valley, well, what are you going to do with him? There was a sculpture tour starting up in Oxford, and so I applied to show him in Oxford at the sculpture tour, and I just knew he'd be selected. So I told people I'd bring him to Oxford. And come to find out he wasn't selected, which, I just thought, well, everybody loves the Centaur. How could he not be selected? But anyway, he wasn't. I didn't have a place, like a public place to put him. And I had him at home. And one day, I loaded him up in the back of my pickup. I had a big GMC full-size pickup, and it took me most of the morning to load him up, and I just took him to Oxford on a little tour of Oxford, because I told people in Water Valley I was taking him to Oxford, so I just rode him around Oxford, and it was a lot of fun. It was kind of like a one-man parade, and I went by the square, and went by the Lyceum, and Pat Lamar Park, and Meek Hall, the Powerhouse, and brought him back to Water Valley and put him in the pocket park. I had 2 pickups. I had an old Ford Ranger, so I left my newer pickup with the Centaur in it in the pocket park for the weekend. And I called Mickey Howley, and I asked him if I could unload it, and he said he didn't think it was that great idea, so I had a backup plan. And I left him at Rasputin's restaurant, little restaurant where I had breakfast in front of the Dollar General in Water Valley, across from the little city park. So that's where he set up for last week.
How long had that been?
That was 2016 up until 2019. So he was there roughly 3 years. The reason I moved him is there was some controversy about my art, or my choices of subjects for art in Water Valley. I remember after I made the Centaur, and he was really well liked by most people, but I had heard that a man in Water Valley said that he was going to get rid of that Centaur. That's the last thing he did. So the Water Valley sports teams are named the Blue Devil, and the next piece that I made for Water Valley was a Water Valley Blue Devil, a full-size figure with a pitchfork and a tail, dressed up in a suit, metallic paint on his clothes. And he really had a lot of shock impact for some people. And that wound up being a lot of drama, and he wound up being stolen. I won't go into that story, but he wound up leaving Water Valley. Actually, I had 3 pieces at one time. There was this African-American street preacher in Water Valley, Brother Jimmy Moore, that had died around 2010 or 2011, and I had a good photograph of him. He wore these bright colored suits, and he was kind of a local. You say he personality in Water Valley. Everybody knew him, and he just like somebody off a movie set. When I moved then, I just couldn't believe him, and I got to know him a little bit. And anyway, so I did this full-size painting of Brother Jimmy Lee Moore on a sheet of hardy board, which is like concrete board that doesn't rot. And I had it on display in Martin Street. And I did that for the African American community in Water Valley, and he was a favorite piece. A lot of people liked him. And the Blue Devil, the weekend before he was stolen, was prom night in Water Valley, and in 2017, and a lot of the high school kids were getting their picture taken with the Blue Devil, and before a week was out, he wound up missing. But that's a whole different story. Brother Jimmy's picture wound up missing back in the spring of 2019, which not that long ago. And so that was 2 out of 3. And the Centaur, my first one, had been in Water Valley since 2014. And I got a call one day from the man that owns the lumber yard in Water Valley. And he told me that he would move him anywhere I wanted to move him free of charge with his lumber delivery truck in the lift. That I said, okay, let's wait till after the watermelon carnival. I wanted, he's downtown, close to where they have the street dance and the carnival, so I wanted to leave him there where folks could get to see him when they came back to Water Valley. So the next week he gave me a call one morning about 9:30, and I met him at Water Valley at 10:30, and by noon we had him unloaded and in place in front of Local Color on North Lamar in Oxford. So Willie Wallace let me put it in front of his business, and so he's moved to Oxford, and Willie seems happy with him there. He said he was happy for him to be there, and I've got a little feedback from a few people around Oxford and think he looks good there. So I've got other things going on, and I enjoy seeing my art shown, and I think it's a good place. Good place to show him. I've lived in Oxford for a good many years, and it's probably lived as long in Oxford as I have anywhere, or in Lafayette County. So this is kind of home.
I think it'll be a cultural landmark.
Good. Thank
Well,
you.
I'm glad that Willie let me bring it up here to Oxford, and I think it's in a great place, and maybe it'll add to some of the local color up here with a business that's been here for a few decades, the local color, local landmark here in Oxford.